Hello everybody, I'm Ben and this little maniac is Juno, and welcome to the second of our Naturehood Facebook live feeds. I'll be speaking to you today from my nature space, which is in a little village between Banbury and Bicester. It's a bit of a contrast to the urban garden that James showed us last week, and thank you for doing that, James. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the project to begin with, while hopefully people flock to us in their droves. So Naturehood is a programme run by Earthwatch Europe. We're a community programme with wildlife at its heart, and it's very much about getting people to connect with the nature that's on their doorstep, specifically in this case in their gardens, but it's also about getting people speaking to each other, obviously from a respectable distance in this day and age, but sharing their enthusiasm and their passion for nature. We're doing these live events during what everyone seems to refer to as these interesting times, when lots of people are spending a lot more time at home, and it's just an opportunity for us to showcase the potential of a range of gardens to support wildlife and to provide a really useful outlet for people when you are staying at home. As I say, James did his garden last week. Mine's a slightly different context. It's a bit more suburban, rural in terms of its character. We've been here for about 3 years. We're owner-occupiers. I've got 2 primary-age children and the lunatic dog as introduced at the beginning of the piece. So, you know, wildlife, you know, it's a huge passion of mine, but in terms of my garden, it needs to fall in line between the demands of a young family and a maniac Patterdale Terrier. The work that we've done so far in Oxford and Swindon has been supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and we're really grateful for them, for their support, and the players of the National Lottery for providing the cash to do that. I know that all the lottery funders are really rallying round and providing huge support to people who are struggling through this COVID time, and we're really, really grateful for their support. Our delivery in Swindon is in partnership with the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust. Again, we're really grateful for them. Next week you'll be hearing from Jo, who leads our delivery in Swindon, and she's going to be taking you round her wildlife garden. So that's probably enough from me to begin with. Now, I don't have a posh selfie stick like James does, so if you'll excuse the clunky handheld, then I will just get moving. And there we go, now we're looking forward. Now, so we start off back here, which is our patio and or canvas for the children's artistic talents. I think we can all agree that it's, you know, incredible, and they've, you know, two budding geniuses at work there. And as we go around, we've got the mandatory bug hotel. Not sure if the proximity to the barbecue does particularly well for it, but we do have, you know, a few signs of habitation there. And just giving you a little pan around the garden, it's west facing, which means you get lovely sunsets in the evening. You can see the fetching buttressing on our fence there as Kira and Dennis tried to blow it into next door's garden. That's waiting for me to reset the posts, which I consider to be non-essential travel. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. And we'll start off in our little greenhouse, where this year's crop of chilli seedlings is just coming out. We'd normally be distributing those around work for fellow workmates to no doubt kill on their desks. So it's going to have to wait for a while. We'll bring them on a bit back here and then take them out. And later on, you know, assuming we're allowed out to garden centres, we'll probably bring some tomatoes on in here. It's quite nice, you know. We've allowed some carefully placed cracks in the glazing, so it's very accessible to flying insects. And obviously, all these plants, when they start fruiting, they start flowering, and it gives a nice source of nectar. moving onwards now. As you can see, I mean, this is a very much an amenity garden. We make provision for wildlife where we can, but obviously we need the space for the kids to play around, and you know, the dog basically terrorizes every single living creature that comes in here. We originally had lots of plans around fence gaps and things like that to let the hedges through, but one of the natures of this type of dog is that if there's the slightest little hole, she's in there digging away, and we're going to give it a little while to hopefully let her get established before trying to put in some suitably reinforced fence gaps in there. Now we've got a couple of plants and shrubs here. This had an interesting moment here last year when it came out. You can see this one, this is in flower, and you've got a small flat flower on this one. Now when this one comes out, you get a pink sort of goblet shaped flower, and I was out here last summer looking at it, and you had bees on both plants, but a completely different species of bee on each plant. One obviously liked to sort of burrow into a flower, while the other one would just land on top of it and get its nectar that way. And that's maybe something that, you know, people can be doing in their gardens, is have a look at what's flowering, what shape the flowers are, and if you can spot any differences between the types of insect that are visiting. We planted this tree, sense of enormous well-being there. It's a little black flowering cherry. Now as of yesterday there was one blossom defiantly hanging on, but that's given up the ghost now, so we're just sort of looking at it to come into leaf. But these sorts of blossoming trees are really, really important, because generally speaking they're the first source of nectar that comes out after the winter. And this tree gave us a lovely bit of display, and for sort of bees and other insects that are emerging from hibernation, you know, it's a really important asset to start the year off. With that being out of flower, it means that most of the heavy lifting nectar-wise is going to be done by the what I loosely refer to as the lawn here. You can see there's a healthy crop of daisies in there, and it's really important that these come along to provide a little source of nectar, to bridge the gap between when the main sort of shrubs and plants really start flowering later in the spring and into the summer. I try and leave a foot or so at the back of the lawn to grow a bit longer, a bit wilder, just let a few dandelions come along. I'm not proud, and it's also kind of quite compatible with me being quite a lazy gardener. Obviously we've got quite a big set of fences here, but we're trying to mask these up with climbers and ramblers. Again, it's more of a source of nectar for the bugs and critters. Leaving a wild corner in here. Anyone making any comparisons between the location of our wild corner and the length of the extension cable on our lawnmower is very, very cynical, but very, very accurate indeed. And then again, you know, a few more things that we're desperately trying to train up this wall. You know, gives us a bit more visual interest, but also it's another source of pollen. We've got random chives growing out of the cracks in our paving here, so that's pretty excellent on a potato salad. But again, lovely purple flower heads as it gets later on in the year. Oh, and if you just look down here, you might, if you're sharp of eye, pick out a little different texture in the grass there. That's where there did used to be a flat paved path running down and cutting the garden in half, so we took that up a couple of years ago. So that's pull up your paving, duly ticked off for our nature space actions. I'm going to just quickly whip round to our front garden now, bypassing the bins and delightful things like that, because it's a bit of a different character, but a few more different features and a bit more interest to it. Got my bay leaf here, more roses, some repurposed wellies from our kid there. That had some lovely daffodils in it, nice bit of early flowering going on there. And then really kind of a project. As I say, my wife and I, we're not gardeners. We don't really sort of understand a lot about what this is, but we try, and every year we'll generally take a few things out, add a few more new things, and just gives us a crop of nice sort of visual interest throughout the year. This one's the next one to come into flower here. You can see these little flower heads just ready to burst forth, and I imagine that in the next week or so this one's going to be alive with insects. Again, a mix of sort of shrubs, perennials, bulbs coming in. We've got the herbs there, the rosemary rather, just coming into flower, so it's tasty in the food and another good source of nectar. And then towards the end there we've got a few lavender plants, and those are really good for us all through the summer. They're flowering and really good source of nectar. Now we're going to go in here, and I found this the other day, which is quite an interesting one. Huge great bumblebee set up residence in there. I sat there for ages trying to get a picture of it emerging, but to no avail. But we'll see how that goes. So, you know, they're not just in traditional hives, the nests that you'd associate with bumblebees. A lot of them are ground nesting. And again, we have a few more shrubs now. We were really down on these shrubs when we started moving in. They're quite thick, they're quite dense, not a lot of berrying, fruiting or flowering, but actually they provide really good shelter for the birdies, and they all flock to the bird feeders, which I can see have been dutifully refilled for today's appearance. It's one of the things we get asked most frequently in Naturehood is about bird feeding, when to do it, what to do it, and really there's no real bad side to feeding birds as long as you clean your feeders from time to time to stop disease spreading. Then there are very few downsides. For ourselves, we try and keep them filled during the winter when obviously food's very scarce, but also through spring and into early summer when birds are spending a huge amount of energy nesting, mating and rearing their young. And then we'll tend to let them run empty as we get into the summer and later in the year, so that the little birdies can learn and pick up their natural foraging habits rather than being dependent on feeders for all their lives. So that is basically it, and a few more roses here. Now what I might just sort of try and do, tempting fate here I know, is just to kind of pause, sit back, try and blend into the background and just see if we get any sort of action or characters appearing around the feeder. Predictably enough, not a sausage. Okie dokie, well that seems as good a time as any to wrap up. Thanks a lot for tuning in. As I say, Jo will be live this time next week, and she's going to take us around her nature garden in the West Country. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Take care, stay home, stay safe, and signing out.